Fantastic.
All right, everybody's ready to roll? Who's has the echo been fixed? Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Township of Georgian Bay for this special council meeting, I'm going to call it, of Tuesday, December 19th, 2023. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 9:04. And in the spirit of reconciliation, we wish to acknowledge the enduring relationship between Indigenous peoples and the territories they traditionally occupied. We recognize and deeply appreciate the historic connection they have to this place, the land, the water, the sky, and all that live on it, in it, and above it. We are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of Indigenous people who have taken care of this place and who continue to care for it. And we want to show our respect. Hundreds of years after the first treaties were signed, they remain relevant today. May they guide our decisions and our actions. We commit to learn, to educate, to honor sacred places, and to take action towards real truth and reconciliation. Miigwech. All right, we have, for those online, and we know we have a fair number of folks online. We have no members of the public in our audience at this point. We have half a dozen staff members and 3 councillors and a clerk behind the desks here, and the rest of you are all online. And we're going to look at the budget. But before we do that, I have moved by Councillor Bocek, seconded by Councillor Graziano. I see your name, Councillor Graziano. I just want to make sure you're there.
I'm here. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. That means you can be a mover, or a seconder in this case. Be it resolved that Council adopts the regular agenda of December 19th, 2023 as circulated. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. I note for anybody paying attention that we have 2 councillors missing, but they intend to join us when they can shortly. And now, the next motion in front of me is a full of numbers 2-pager on the budget. But before I get to that, Ms. Boutiette, would you care to inform us about how draft 2 appears different than draft 1, please?
Through your worship, I'd like to skip over a few pages, which are background and how we got here today, and go to page 4 of 9 of the attached presentation. And draw your attention to where we are landing today after draft 2, and wish to open the floor to council to pose any questions that you might have on the changes in draft number 2.
You are going directly to, well, I'll call it the 3rd page of numbers in the presentation. And as you say, page 4 of 9 of your report, 2024 draft budget, draft 2, in which you've listed probably a dozen, I haven't counted them, a dozen changes from the first.
That's correct.
Okay, we're there. So, Council, I see Councillor Predko's hand. Let's have you start off the conversation.
Sure, I'm just have my hand up because Councillor Jarvis isn't here, and I'll just go first. So,
taking advantage of the opportunity.
And I think I know the answer to the question, but could you please explain the difference between the 10.85% increase described in the motion and the header of the report versus page 4, the bottom right-hand corner, where it's, I believe, 9.91%.
Sure. The difference is the growth, which is shown on line 2, which is 68,000 of assessment growth. But as a tax increase as a whole, you have to include it. Therefore, part of the increase is funded by growth.
Okay, thank you. And then as well, the difference between draft 1 and draft 2 has the revenue items that are described in your report. My only comment is we have a couple $100,000 for a mat tax, and council has never had an opportunity to vote on this, even at a high level. So my only concern would be that we don't know what the council's appetite is for actually passing a mat tax, and do you see a risk with us including $200,000 in revenue for a mat tax? And obviously, if we didn't pass it, we'd be looking for funds from the reserves, correct?
That would be an alternative for funding, or alternatively, we could adjust the budget upwards and take out that revenue and tax for the difference.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I wonder if I could ask a question on draft on page 4, the bottom right corner, where you have general levy, capital levy, and overall levy.
Yes.
And the numbers don't make any sense to me. And the reason I say that is that the general levy for an average home is $9 and the capital is $50, or 5 times the amount. Whereas on the seasonal, the general levy is $55 and the capital levy is $53, something less. Something in the formula must have taken you by surprise.
The increase of the capital levy is 16.27. Let me take out my manual calculator.
It's just a ratio between the general and capital levy is so different on one versus the other.
So our capital portion.
I hate to hit you with such picky numbers, given that the overall net effect of everybody's going to be about the same, but it's just at least one of those numbers can't be right.
Let me pull it back up.
Brings a tear to your eye, doesn't it?
Be great, Council, if you guys can send those questions in advance.
Okay, well, let's go to Councillor Hazelton in the meantime. Councillor Hazelton, please.
Thank you and good morning on this lovely wintry day. It actually feels like winter for a change, which is awesome if you like snow.
You obviously didn't have to drive into the office today.
No, but I've already shown my driveway, so I've already been doing that outdoor stuff. So I have a few questions, if I may, and I don't want to interrupt Julie's train of thought. So should we wait for her to solve that one, or do we want to skip it and move on to my questions?
I believe the calculations are right. It looks like yeah, and now I'm doubting because another accountant is challenging me.
I mean, it would look like if the average home at 178K is $50, then a seasonal home at 441, which is more than double, would be over 100K, or so over $100. And but I don't want to introduce other topics unless you want us to move on with them. Maybe you could.
Ms. Boutier is clearly deep in thought.
Maybe Julie could punt that one to Celine while we keep on going.
Sure, give me one quick second.
It's probably one of the lesser significant questions.
It's just a detail. What's important in details? Come on. Actually, while Julie is doing that, I want to ask some questions, and this is more for my fellow councilors, and it really doesn't impact Julie so much. But what I would like to draw to our attention is the massive amount of money we're paying to Severance Sound. And we asked back in 2020 for Severance Sound to give us an overview of what it is they're providing and the benefits to our township. And I think certainly what I have concluded when I go through that list is we are paying a massive amount of money for very little services. And if we were to go to our residents and say, try to sell an SSEA investment on an annual basis, they would be likely discounting anything we said, because there's very little value that comes from it, except for that contractual water testing that's paid for by the district. But as much as I like to have Severance Sound, SSEA distribute seedlings, that benefits a very small population. Back in 2020, there were 5 residents that participated in one of their programs. When you look at what they have documented as the value to our township, I cannot imagine how we could ever justify that. And my recommendation is that if we have a multi-year contract of commitment, that we immediately initiate a cancellation of that, and then force robust discussion on the topic. But allowing this basically $100,000 expense to recur every year without getting into a granular analysis of the value of it to our community and to our township, I think is folly. And we are looking at lots of other items here, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, whatever. And that 100,000 item, we just are blindly repeating every year and renewing it.
So you've stated clearly what your thoughts on this. So then the next question, though, is do we take any action, and what action does council want to take? And I see Councillor Bocek and Graziano with their hands up. So let's discuss that point. Councillor Bocek.
Yeah, hold on before we go on. I do have a bunch of other questions, and I'll hopefully come back after Julie has been kind of dealt with the item that you brought to her attention.
Yeah, I suspect the chair will allow you to speak once or twice more during this meeting. Councillor Bocek.
Thank you, and through you, Chair.
And right now, by the way, the topic is SSEA.
Yes.
And then I'll go back to Councillor Hazelton for other topics.
Yes.
Okay.
My comments will be such that I am the township's representative with SSEA, along with Councillor Graziano as the alternative. And I think we have a complete understanding of the value of SSEA and what it brings to our township. Perhaps Councillor Hazelton has not dove in deep enough to find out some of the provincially regulated services that we are mandated to do that SSEA does for us. I won't get into that right now, but I just finished a complete delegation with Tay Township about the value of SSEA, and it was a long half-a-day delegation to Tay Township, explaining the value of the services and the history of the services. And perhaps that delegation should be brought into this council's chambers and the same delegation done here, so that you, Councillor Hazelton, would have a better understanding of the value offered. Thank you.
I think that makes perfect sense, in that if we are to discuss whether or not SSEA represents good value, we have to better understand what they're bringing to the table. Any other comments from anyone on SSEA? All right. So, staff, who can we direct to see if we can get SSEA to make a presentation to us? Ms. Way.
I'll email the SSEA right now and ask them to come in the new year.
Okay. Sure.
Maybe we could have a meeting in January.
Maybe. Well, but the chair can always call one.
Okay, you can stop that kind of talk right now.
Let's pick a day when there's a big snowstorm.
Ms. Boutiette,
Through your worship, I did find my error. I had just switched the general levy and the capital levy. So the dollar amount for now all my tables are wrong. But essentially the capital portion is 2136 and the general portion is 2241 for a total of $43.76.
so that's for the average home. It should be $43, not $60.
Correct?
Okay, that that makes perfect sense, and that it's also more consistent with the ratios with all the other numbers. So I'm glad we solved that. So in other words, and I think this is important for us to understand, is that the draft budget as it currently stands is will affect the average home value with the, I won't say the value, but the impact assessment of $178,000 will be paying roughly $43 more a year, and the average seasonal resident assessed at $441,000 will be paying roughly $108 more per year in 2024 versus 2023.
Correct.
Okay, that's important. Now, Councillor Hazelton, I'll go back to you if you want to bring anything else up, and then I'm going to go to Councillor Graziano.
Thank you. So I do have a few questions, and specifically on page 4. I've done a lot of thinking, and similar to the thought process that led me to bring up the SSEA topic, I think when we talk about these line items, we need to understand how we're going to sell them to our community and what the value is that these items bring to our community. And the issue of burn permits, I'm now at a point where I believe that there is very little value to a resident to buy a burn permit. The value is to the township to get their contact information and get visibility into their lot and the likelihood that they might have a fire or of some kind. But there's very little value to the resident, and so I think we had some other councillors saying that we should be not charging for them, and I'm back at that point. The next item that I wanted to address is the fee for the commercial use of launches and landings. And on one hand, I'm 100% supportive of the concept, but I'm not sure how we could get that sorted out and in working order for 2024. I suspect that our operations department will have a lot of work to do to figure out how they could actually implement a charging process for this. I'm not sure that cards or passes or things like that will drive that kind of revenue. So I'm not sure that that's a good number to include. And then
Councillor Hazelton, you're referring to the $6,000 for commercial use of launches?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just
So
want to make sure.
as I say, I'm 100% supportive of it, but I'm not sure that we could get there in 2024 to achieve and realize that revenue. So I'm not sure that it's a valid number. I would love to see the marina slips and trailer licenses bumped up, but I'll step aside on that one for the moment. Down at the bottom, the revenue study that Councillor Graziano brought forward, I see it's in there at 40K. And I don't know where we got the 40K number, but my first question would be, even if a study of comprehensive nature costs 40K, I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for us to look at this as a 2024 initiative and then a 2025 initiative. In other words, in 2024, we basically go for the low-hanging fruit from a revenue increase perspective and allow that study to bring back key numbers. And so, for example, I was absolutely delighted to hear Councillor Bocek offer the kinds of funds that he pays for his boat slips and or trailer fees or whatever in his southern locations. And I think our numbers are way lower, but I think that having a third-party revenue study done to guide us on what they should be up in our township is ideal, and I would consider those as a couple of pieces of low-hanging fruit. And so I'm thinking that perhaps that revenue study is something that could be split in half with, only allocating 20K in 2024, get that low-hanging fruit, and then keep it going for 2025. And I'll pause there. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Councillor Cooper. I'm going to go to Councillor Graziano, and then we'll give you a turn to ask some questions or make observations. Councillor Graziano.
Thank you, and through your Mayor, apologies for the background noise. I am getting my haircut. I was supposed to be in and out of the haircut seat a long time ago, but he's a little delayed this morning. So, Ms. Bouquet, if I can ask you a question with respect to IT, what is the cumulative cost of IT that we're spending right now within the township? If you don't mind, do we have a total tally on that?
Are you asking including salaries and wages?
Excluding salary and wages, please.
Excluding?
Just the cost of third parties as well as software and systems.
Sure, give me one moment to pull that up.
Thank you. And while you're doing that, the root of my question pertains to, I wonder whether we've investigated partnering with the District of Muskoka to handle our IT services. And the reason why I ask this question is because at AMO, the mayor of Huntsville and I had a lengthy conversation, and I believe that Huntsville currently uses the district services and goes through the district and realizes some form of economies, cost efficiencies rather. And I'm wondering if we've investigated that yet.
We absolutely have investigated that, and the last trial that we did was before we RFP'd for a managed service provider, and at that time the district refused because they didn't have sufficient capacity to also accommodate our IT contractual needs.
And I'm sorry, when was that? The last time we did that, what year was that?
I believe it was early 2022 when we changed managed service provider.
Is it worth perhaps looking into whether or not they've now, acquired the additional bandwidth to be able to accommodate our requirements?
Actually, the managed service contract that we entered in 2022 is a 3-year contract. So as soon as that comes up, we will definitely explore that option again, which is coming up pretty fast. It was all of 22, all of 23, and all of 24. So we will be looking at RFPing probably in Q4 of 24. So we will be exploring that next year.
Thank you.
May I answer Councillor Graziano's IT question? So I pulled up draft 1, which was presented to Council on November 15th. The total IT cost without salaries and benefits is around 500,000.
And if I may, Your Worship, through a follow-up question.
Certainly.
Do we happen to know whether or not we would have realized cost savings had we been able to piggyback off of the district's IT services? Did we know what the cost would have been to us had they been able to accommodate us?
They could not even provide us with a number. That is how capacity limited they were at the time, because we waited. We postponed the issuance of the RFP, I believe 3 or 4 months, waiting for them to provide us pricing or a quote. And after 3 or 4 months, they said they don't even have the capacity to provide us a price or a quote at that time.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Cooper, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everybody. I'll try and keep the background noise down here. I'm not getting my hair cut, but the bloodletting is very noisy stuff. No, I'm kidding. It's not noisy at all. And I'm not bloodletting. But I just wanted to say I'm sorry I'm a bit late. I did the best I could to get here on time. Anyway.
Just note that you beat Councillor Jarvis.
Well, that isn't hard for me. Anyway, so I just walked in at the end there. I take it we were asked to sort of give our comments about various services and fees and that are entering into our budget. Is that correct?
Yes, we were encouraged to look at page 4 of 9, the sort of the third page of numbers that was in Ms. Boutiette's presentation. And I've basically opened up the floor, and the only comments you really missed were Councillor Predko, who started by celebrating that he beat Jarvis to the punch.
Excellent. Well, it's nice, and maybe he will get to do that again himself. So who knows? But just all sort of funning aside, I did overhear some comments about SSEA. I walked in at just the end of that, or tuned in. I didn't walk. I guess one of the things that I would ask all of us to do when it comes to evaluating SSEA, I certainly don't criticize the work they've done in the past. It really was a remediation program that, as I understand it, the full part of the remediation ended, I don't know, in 2000 and maybe 4 or 5, something like that. I can't remember exactly the date. And since then, it's been sort of other activities, let's put it that way. And I understand that we have certain services that we're getting from Severn Sound Environmental through SSEA. I get that. And it may be advantageous to us financially for that portion of it. But I think one of the things that each councillor and our mayor should take a look at is just the basic SSEA, what shall I call it, geographic territory that they look after. If you look at the members of SSEA, everybody but the township of Georgian Bay essentially has all of their Georgian Bay waterfront taken care of by SSEA. And if I've misquoted that, or misstated that, is I just look at their map and, you know, Tiny, Tay, Midland, Penetang, blah, blah, Port Nickel, Victoria Harbor, all those areas. And the only very southern part of our township is involved with the activities of SSEA. And that is sort of an apples and oranges analysis. I don't know why we would be paying the amount we do, or it should be at least 50% less than the others, if not 75% less, because aside from sort of the Severn Sound part of our township, Port Severn out, Green Island and up a little bit, but the rest of our waterfront has been completely missed. It's not being examined by SSEA. If that's incorrect, I'd be happy to hear about it, but it's not far off. And so why are we paying what we're paying? I'm not saying we shouldn't contribute. I think we need to evaluate the service, and I think we particularly need to evaluate it from the analysis, financial analysis due to the geography. It doesn't cut it for me. Thank you.
Well, no, and if I may, I think Councillor Cooper, that Ms. Way is already going to extend an invitation to SSEA to make a presentation to us. But I think what you've brought up, which is valid, is not only what services are they providing, but I would argue one step further, and that is what ratio of their time is spent on our township versus their other partners. You know, if we're 10% of their time, we should be 10% of their costs. And if we're 30% of their time, we should be 30% of their costs, if I can put it that way. So I think that would be interesting information to glean from them as well, as to how much of their time is spent on our area versus the other areas.
If I may just follow up briefly.
Please.
And thank you for your comments. You're bang on. I just ask you to go to the reports we've ever had for over the years from SSEA, and it's not the first time, by the way, I've asked this question and posed this issue, shall we say. This is not new, but it's hard to get traction. And especially with all due respect, having a counselor on the board. And it's happened in the past that we've had a lot of pushback, and I'm not suggesting we're going to get that today, but I know in the past we've had a lot of pushback for somebody that wanted to be on that board and wasn't too sure about, I wasn't too sure about the evaluation of the actual services. But please do take a look at the map itself. It's pretty obvious if you look at the map and how much waterfront we have and how much of it's in their target area. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Bocek, followed by Councillor Predko, please.
Thank you. And I think my question is going to go to our finance department, Julie. Since our last meeting, I've been out knocking on doors of marinas and campgrounds. Some watched our last meeting and kind of got a hint of what was happening. And their concern was that currently their billing is going out right now to their patrons. And their invoices are being shipped out at the beginning of the year. And they thought if the fees that we were talking about were going to be an obligation of the business, in other words, if we counted the number of slips over 30 feet, you have 20, then you pay X number of dollars for those 20 slips. They kind of have to have that information, and they kind of have to get that out in their billing so that they can recoup the costs. And their fear is that our timing is not the best. And I would just like to hear your thoughts on that, if I could. Thank you.
Through your worship, if the budget passes with the number, there's still policy development to be done before we could actually have a user fee and so on. The timing of that, we know in municipal world that doesn't move immediately. We don't have a meeting scheduled in January unless the chair calls one. I would estimate this timing to be more early Q2.
If I may. Thank you. That was kind of the answer that I was expecting. And I think the answer that they're expecting too, it's just going to be a budgetary concern from them, from their point of view, how they roll this out. And I think perhaps working with them in the new year to try and get some sort of understanding would go a long way with these people. So I guess we'll deal with that in the springtime. There's nothing much we can do unless their suggestion was that maybe this be rolled out in 2025 and that we would have enough time to come up with some policies and procedures. I didn't think that was apropos, so I said I would bring it up in this meeting and find out where we stood on it, and I think your answer is quite rational, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. Councillor Predko.
Thank you, and through your worship, my question is directed to our Director of Planning, Mr. Whitlib. And excuse me, so in our latest draft, there's the offering to eliminate or remove an FTE position in planning, which I think is a technician or admin. Do you mind just explaining what impact this might have to your department operationally?
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Predko. That's correct. There's currently a vacant planning technician position. And the intent would be to potentially merge that with the current admin position within the department, having one individual with enhanced qualifications providing that both functions, with the admin position sort of shared between the rest of the department, but having someone with technical skills that could assist both from a customer service standpoint, dealing with zoning inquiries and zoning information, as well as perhaps some enhanced computer and GIS skills to assist us in that way.
Thank you. And essentially, you're not expecting this to introduce any bottlenecks or alleviate any other operational issues in the future in 2024?
Introduce any, sorry, I missed that part.
Any other kind of operational bottlenecks in 2024?
No, absolutely not. It would essentially be it'd be the same staff complement number that we have now. We're providing, I think, a thorough service at this point, the way we're staffed up, and it's simply shifting or adding some skills to one of the staff complement.
Okay, thank you.
I think if I may add to that, this is one of the benefits of having a fully staffed planning department, because there are fewer delays, fewer call it resident management challenges, because the file now is active as opposed to have been delegated to some other part of the province to be reviewed. So I like to think that this savings is again directly because we have a fully staffed planning department right now. Yeah. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to follow up briefly on an excellent point that was made by Councillor Bocek with respect to these fees. And one of the things I might suggest is it is a bit unfair to be throwing this at the marinas or the campgrounds at the last minute or even into the year. Pretty hard to be double billing. One of the things we could consider is a half-year billing. And we don't know what that's going to be, but if at least we let them know, and their residents, some of them are in a boat, let them know that there'll be a follow-up billing in 6 months. And so at least that would give us the time to do the work. We'd have to adjust our revenues accordingly, but you know, I don't know that it makes a lot of sense to have our revenues at the current level if it's not very realistic or fair to throw this extra billing at people at the very last minute. In fact, they have they'll have difficulty collecting the funds because they won't know what it is. So they'll be billing out at six months anyway. So why don't we look at it in terms of 6 months in revenue? Thank you.
I think that's an interesting idea when you consider that our typical resident isn't going to be hit with the property tax increase until the second half of the year, because the first half of the year we're going to bill at last year's rates. Just because that gives everybody time to get everything in place. So if we went down that road, your suggestion would be perfectly consistent with what's happening with everybody else. Councillor Hazelton.
Yes, I hear the concern on this boat and trailer licensing, but to Councillor Bocek's concern that he's had raised to him by these businesses, if we passed a resolution today, for example, stating that we were going to provide these additional fees or increases in fees with the explicit details of how they would be applied to be provided shortly, which is really speaking to what Julie has commented on. Then from a budgeting standpoint, the businesses have an opportunity to bake into their fees and their fee structures the numbers that we are talking about. And if it turns out that there is one of their customers who shouldn't have been charged that fee, they can always refund it. But missing out on half of $68,000 is half of 20, 40, 60, 70, half of $70,000 is not something that given the tightness of the budget we have, is not something I think we want to do. So if there was, as I say, if there's an opportunity to pass a resolution today saying this is a direction that we're going, and communicate that to the businesses, and then say the details to follow, explicit details to follow, then I think that we would give them the information advance warning that they need.
Thank you. I think it was interesting. I saw, I don't know if the CEO Mariotti shared it with all of you, but, and I'd have to go check. But anyway, it was an interesting article about some location, I forgot where it was in Ontario, where their approach to the trailers and boats slips was actually to apply a MAT tax to them. And I think it was 2%. And so so that, in other words, if they're entertaining people as, I'll call it visitors, which many of these people would be because they're not assessed by MPAC. They just suggested a 2%. They did a 2% MAT tax. Now, I haven't followed up to see if they had any difficulties with the implementation, because I think this was introduced a year or two ago. But it would be another approach that we could consider when we're doing our doing our revenue study. Councillor Bochek.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. I tend to agree with both Councillor Cooper and Councillor Hazelton on this, and not really sure what the proper approach to it is, but I do remember in our last council meeting, Councillor Graziano bringing a resolution forward, something to do with a white paper and having a consultation or a consultant make us better understand some of these things. And I'm not sure that the value of that paper wouldn't answer a lot of these questions.
Well, and that's the $40,000 revenue study.
Yeah.
That's our last item
Right.
on
So
this list.
I'm kind of in agreement with my fellow councillors here, as well as, I kind of drove this point that it's maybe in advance, maybe a little too soon, but I think there is a workaround here, and I'm really interested to hear what our finance department would come up with moving forward. And I don't think that answers here today.
Well, and I think, if I may take that one step further, the I'm going to call it aggressiveness, and I don't mean that in any sort of negative sense, but the aggressiveness of the marine slip amount of $120 and the trailer license fee being tripled from 20 to 60, I think would be better supported if we had information of I'll call it neighboring municipalities and how much they charge and how they charge before we may jump in. In other words, it may not be wise to have as much income included in our draft budget, even though those fees, we may introduce those fees effective July 1st or something once we've had a look at them and staff have come back with recommendations. But right now we've added in the range of $75,000 of revenue on these fees, and I'm not sure how much of that 75 we may or may not realize in this year, even though we might easily realize that in 2025. I don't know. Councillor Hazelton.
My concern is if we delay notifying the businesses immediately that this is coming, they are going to be in a pickle in the middle of the year, because they will have sent out their annual fee structure and they won't have a capacity to be flexible, and it will hurt them financially, and which is what we do not want to do. So if this is something that we are interested in doing, personally, again, from what I've heard from Councillor Bochek, these numbers are a fraction of what they likely could be or should be. I don't think there's any reason to think that they are unreasonable. And I think that we should strongly consider passing a resolution today that we would inform the businesses that these are coming, and they may be annual numbers or they may be semi-annual numbers, but the businesses should be baking these kinds of increases into their numbers so they don't fall short when we get our final act together on this.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, and Mayor, and I certainly would support notification. I just thought it was a bit much to sort of arrive with a number in the middle of the year or 3 or 4 months out, and having had these businesses already done their annual billing, I think a heads up at least would be help mitigate the problem. So I'd be in full support of that. I just understanding of this budget process, maybe Julie and Mayor, are we walking through this document we have here that came with the package and going and looking at each line? Is that part of what you're looking for? Are you looking for feedback? Because I see items here that are in red, some in black. I have a bit of a fit when I see the Davis Center is at $50,000 in red. And I'm a bit nervous about that because I think we had a unanimous vote at council to continue down this road because of the opportunity it presents to our township. So is that what we're doing? Are we looking at all these red items and saying yay, nay? Is that what you're suggesting here?
What I'm suggesting is we do have a motion was prepared and was part of our report that listed the draft 2 budget and all the various numbers. And what we could do, and I'll put it to you this way, we could just right now, I could call the motion, we could pass it and we'd be done. So basically, any discussion we're having now is do we think any of those numbers should be changed? In other words, it's not worth discussing numbers that we think are okay. So the question is, should we change any numbers?
So with that in mind,
Yes.
doing what you're not suggesting, I'm suggesting that we certainly not touch the opportunity that we have in Honey Harbor with the Education Center. So that's my 2 cents there. We've had some discussions about SSEA and we need to think about that. But I don't really have too many other things on my hit parade, so to speak. Thank you.
Peter, the red numbers are budget costs, and the black numbers are budget reductions. So it's just the way I think Julie has laid it out. It's not suggesting that we remove the numbers or they're in question. It's just how Julie is referencing. Julie, could you confirm?
Confirmed, and just to clarify, be clear, the change in the Davis Center is actually that we would draw that from reserves. So it's not that we wouldn't be doing the project, it's that we fund it from reserves instead of taxation.
Yes. I think as far as this council and staff are concerned, the Davis project, the Davis Center is definitely on the action to-do list. In other words, it is there. Nobody suggested that we're pulling it. Right now, there's been a request of the district to get more information, and that we hope that the additional information will satisfy them, that they will match our commitment to the phase 3.
Mayor, if I could just finally say, and thank you for the clarification from Julie and you and Councillor Hazelton. Much appreciated to help this poor old guy with his understanding of what we're doing. But I would like to also say, in case anybody's heard about this, the location for the Education Center on the Delawana is not on a floodplain. In case anybody, for some strange reason, seems to think it is. It certainly is not. But we might want to take a look at the Watershed Council and what they're thinking. Thank you.
Councillor Bocek.
Thank you. And through you, I'm going to try and rationalize something here from my business brain instead of my public brain, and when it comes to finance. And this is to do with the revenues and fees generated from trailers and boats. If we include in the budget the numbers predicted of the revenues that would be generated by this fee, and we don't collect those numbers, now I'm thinking of my budgeting and forecasting in the business world, that puts us in a very precarious position. And all of a sudden we're looking for revenues because we based our increase in our tax rate based on these revenues, and all of a sudden we fall short because we didn't collect those revenues, or the program isn't going to roll out till next year or something. So not being knowledgeable in this, I'm going to ask you, how do we handle that from a finance point of view? If this program, if we put it in the budget, put the revenues in the budget, but we fail to execute and fail to collect those monies. Does that make any sense to anyone?
Okay. It did to me. I hope that's not a bad sign.
So through you, your worship, every budget item is an estimate there are things we know with a little bit more certainty than others, but even in our winter snow plowing budget, we don't know how much it's going to snow and how much it's actually going to cost. So every budget item is an estimate. We create our taxation rate and our taxation income levy based on these estimates. And if we fall short, we have two options. We can fund it the subsequent year, or we could draw from reserves. And those are the way we would fund if we've made a bad or incorrect estimate.
Thank you, and I appreciate you dumbing that down for me, actually.
And most years in the past, when the year ends, we actually end up in a little bit better position than we predicted, because some of the expenses didn't happen or some unexpected revenue did come in. So, and the good news is, I mean, we're obliged by law, by the provincial law, to have a balanced budget. And the final balancing number is our tax rate. But having said that, we're fortunate enough to have reserves that can help absorb the tougher times. And yeah, so by estimating this as an income item, it would serve two purposes. One is that by putting that in there, then we don't charge quite as much tax to our residents. And B, it will serve as notice, in effect, and we can make it more explicit to the marina and trailer park operators in our township. It makes it explicit that we're going down this road of looking at an increase or new fees for I'll call it non-resident users of our township. Absolutely.
I appreciate it. And I did make mention of this after our last council meeting, and I probably did it in error, and I apologize for that. But I was wondering if there was a way that, similar to an impact assessment, these fees are similar to that, in my way of thinking, without an assessment. Is there a way that we could have an increase in these fees indexed basically on our increase in our tax rate? So if next year our tax rate went up 4.5%, then these fees would follow that same escalation, because these fees are meant to pay for the services that they're getting, the roads and the et cetera, which that's what our tax base is based on. So really, they should see the same increase as our ratepayers. And that's a thought I threw out there.
And it makes a lot of sense when you consider our $20 a trailer fee that's currently in place. Has been in place for what, 15 or 20 years or something at the same rate?
Yeah.
It hasn't gone up.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me that we would come up with a figure of $10 and just leave it there for 20 years when our costs have gone up so much and their fee is not in relation to that. So,
by the way, Ms. Way corrected me, in 1998, that's a quarter century.
There you go.
Has been $20 a unit.
So if this could, and I mean, this may resonate with some other councillors that know that every year after year, we just see our costs going up and our expenses going up, and some of our fees don't go up to match that. So I'll throw it out there and see where it lands. Thank you.
Any additional comment, or should I go to Councillor Hazelton?
Just that our user fee bylaw will be coming back shortly in 2024, and there are a lot of municipalities who do an indexing factor, and I think that would be a great basis for an index.
That sounds excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Hazelton.
Yeah, I really appreciate what Councillor Bocek has suggested. I think that's something that we should be doing. One of the conclusions I have come to based on the conversations we've heard today is that if we don't pass a resolution today directing staff to inform these businesses, we will likely get zero revenues in 2024 because these businesses are not likely going to be able to introduce new costs partway through the year. And I think it's incumbent on us to set the stage now, communicate immediately, and basically details to follow. And if we don't, I think that almost $75,000 is a high at-risk number, and that's a big number to, based on the other numbers that we're looking at. That's a high number to miss out on. Thank you.
Councillor Petco.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. Just another question about revenues that we're anticipating collecting, and I want to make sure that we just have accurate, reasonable numbers on our estimates. On the short-term bylaw that we passed, we have $200,000 in registration revenue, and I just want to confirm. I think in our bylaw that we passed that for only primary dwellings that are being rented out with one or more units. And I think from a Granicus identification of a listing, it may, if somebody has more than one listing, if they've got 2 apartments in their house that are listed, that would be 2 listings. And since it's one dwelling, it would be 1 registration. And we're excluding the commercial properties. And I just want to make sure that everybody is on the staff side is comfortable that what was counted as a registration is a single residential dwelling and not including multiple listings at one dwelling or commercial properties.
Chief Undum.
Through your worship, I will need to confirm that with my staff.
Okay, thank you. And I mean, I guess a position we're in is if there is a mistake or an overestimation on any of our revenue numbers, the makeup is from reserves, and I'm meeting to council on how to deal with it mid-year.
Through your worship, council would have the option of funding it in a subsequent year or drawing it from reserve.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's I appreciate your point, because if I understand it correctly, what you're suggesting is we should have that fee per rental unit. And if a property has 2 or 3 rental units on it, those are 2 or 3 should, which I think so. I have no idea how many of those would be in our township, but I'm sure Granicus would be able to tell us at some point.
I think this is a very good point, because this is exactly what my wife and I were thinking about doing with our home when we retire, is make it into 2 Airbnbs, upstairs and downstairs, and the golfers from Oak Bay could rent it. And that would mean that I would need 2 registrations, correct? Sorry, cutting into your business.
I think there's more than enough business for everybody.
Yeah, but there would just be 1 registration in this case? Is that what I'm hearing? If I had 2 rental apartments in my private home that I advertised on Airbnb and rented them out to golfers, would I need 2 registrations?
Chief Undum.
You're going to get back to me with a firm answer.
Yeah. Yep. Is your microphone on?
I need to get to staff to make sure that they have looked into that and planned for that.
Thank you.
Councillor Graziano, are you still getting your hair clipped?
Yeah, no, I'm not, but thank you for inquiring. I do have a couple of questions if I can. Ms. Bouquet, last year's increase, what was that by way of dollar value for on the average full-time resident as well as the seasonal resident? Do we know?
We absolutely know. Give me a moment to pull up last year's report.
Sure, thank you.
where Christmas is from, where we have learned.
What in the world was that?
That was Karen.
That was not me. But for reference earlier, when I was trying to get everything going, I accidentally started streaming Christmas music. So
I think Councillor Bochek wants to make a motion that we listen to Christmas music instead of budget talk. All I can offer is I will not be singing for everybody's pleasure because that would just be too painful.
We can ask Councillor Jarvis to sing for us when he gets here.
Okay, that sounds good.
I've got my earplugs ready.
Ms. Boutier,
On the average home, it was about $54.
$54 last year was the increase? Yeah. Okay, thank you. And this
And
year,
the seasonal cottage, sorry.
well, it would be 2.5 times that roughly.
So roughly $110, $108, roughly the same as what we did this year, because I'm seeing a total levy or overall levy of 9.91%. Last year, I believe we netted out what, 5.4% in overall levy? Was that?
No, the difference is the levy here we're talking about is just a township portion. But
right.
Last year, that 5-point-something% was the overall property tax. Once you took into account district and education portions, the overall tax increase that the average resident saw was a little under 6%, if memory serves. And this year, district has come in, I think, just under 5%. We saw that yesterday, but I think it's just under 5%. And that represents almost half the bill. So, so I'm going to guess that this year, on percentages, it'll be in the 6% range as well, overall.
Should be right on, 5.9 or 6.
So essentially, we're echoing last year's increase this year, and our constituents are going to be having to increase their overall cost of taxes by another $108, in addition to last year's $108. So effectively, we've increased taxes by $200 in the last 2 years for the average. Well, sorry, $120 for the average home and $220 for the average seasonal residents. My next question, if I can, Ms. Bouquet, and perhaps you can help me understand this better. In February, I believe our clerk will be returning back with a potential wordsmith version of our indemnity clause. Should it pass council in February, how do we plan on funding that? And if just for quick reference purposes, I believe that the motion that was previously discussed allocated a total of $8,000 per councillor for the term, netting out about $45,000, maybe a little bit more in total cost. How do we plan on financing that if it's not already allocated in this year's or this budget?
sorry, Julie and I are giving each other the eyes to see who's going to respond. I think I am. Okay, good. That was so moving forward, or traditionally, those are covered under the council legal line, similar to the integrity commissioner. Those types of fees are covered in that realm. Ideally, if we don't use them at all, that would be even better. And we could just take them from that line item if there's something smaller, and that would kind of hopefully balance out. Worst case scenario is they would need to come from reserves, but we could have it that it's on hold. And I mean, the 45,000 is again a high end number, right? That's an overestimation. So fingers crossed we won't need that if we do have changes to our indemnification bylaw, but basically out of reserves is worst case scenario.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor, before we move on to other things, I've had a motion drafted in front of me, and because we talked about it recently, I thought I'd put this in front of council, and then we'll go on to other topics. And I'll just read it. Moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Bocek. Be it resolved, the council directs staff to notify local businesses impacted by any new or increased fees and licenses included in the 2024 budget as soon as possible. All those in favor? All right. We've taken care of that one. That's carried. Now, Councillor Hazelton, on to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Couple of questions for Julie, if I may. I think I understand the answers, but I want to get them corrected again. So if we pass a budget like this, all of the line items that we are including in the budget, they are now authorizing staff to proceed with those expenditures. Is that correct?
A resolution today would direct me to draft a bylaw, but I would understand that as council approves it in principle, and would proceed with telling all the departments that their budget is in principle approved and needs to be ratified by a bylaw.
Okay, so I don't want to belabor the point on our with our friends at SSEA, but we've got a big number there. It would occur to me that if we're going to be bringing them back to do the kind of presentation that Councillor Bocek suggested they did for another municipality, that we might want to put all of those funds in reserves so that they're there and accounted for. In other words, we still tax for it, but put those monies aside in reserves, and then after we've had this, call it a discovery session, justification session, whatever you want to call it, that Councillor Bocek has suggested, assuming we are all happy with what we are hearing, that we approve that expenditure and then fund that out of reserves. That way, we're not today approving it in the absence of the kinds of information that will be coming to us hopefully early in the new year. Does that make sense?
I think it makes sense in that what you do not want to do is pass a budget that says we approve of all SSEA expenditures going forward.
Correct. So I don't want us to approve a budget that doesn't have the funds in there in case we do an about face after the presentation and say, yeah, we need all this stuff. In which case that money would be sitting in reserves and we just yank it out of reserves and fund it. So I don't want through the process of this, of it approving a budget, that we are in turn approving staff to fund that line item.
Ms. Boutia.
Through your worship, in the proposed motion, there is item 4, which is funding for municipal and local boards. Should council wish to go that way, we could add just a wordage that would not make the funding for the SSEA disbursable until further council approval.
And one question, to the best of my knowledge, the SSEA, the contract we have with them has a notice period. I don't know if it was 1 year or 2 years or something. I mean, I'm wondering, but if I understood it correctly, and I don't know, and this is why I'm asking my question right now, if it's an ongoing obligation that we are contractually obliged to that we're in it forever until we give notice. Doesn't make any sense to give notice now, even though we might rescind it after we've had the review. to me, it's a little bit like a topic that came up in front of planning council the other day. You know, we say, well, we'll negotiate, but we can't say we'll negotiate for something we've approved because we've already approved it. Please, Councilor Bochuk.
Councilor Hazelton, sorry for stepping in front of you because you have your hand up, but some information I have that may be helpful here. I know we are contractually obligated and we can't get out of our contractual obligations that easily without proper notification. In saying that, there's so much in SSEA that perhaps council doesn't understand. And after sitting in on the delegation at Tay Township, my eyes were opened up to a lot of the reasons why we pay what we pay. Perhaps this council doesn't know that there is a source water protection reserve fund that we've been paying into for years and years and years. And that's our money. That's our reserve, and it sits in SSEA. And it can be used towards your contractual agreement fees and things like that. So until we actually get a full delegation from SSEA and understand the financial formula and what they provide for us, I don't think we should be looking at trying to escape from an agreement that's been put into place so radically.
Well, and that's fair, except the point I'm trying to make is if they have such a long notice period, and I believe it was 1 or 2 years, I think we should give notice that we very easily might rescind in 2 months' time.
I think that's totally, but I would be agreeable with that. And I think it's something that would prompt them perhaps to come to us.
Yeah. And I'm thinking that we give notice now, like in December, simply because if this is done on a year to year basis, does that, I don't know, but would it mean if we didn't give notice until January that we're actually obligated for 1 full extra year by waiting an extra month? That's my question.
I think that's a great point, and I think that's something that should be exercised, actually.
And so that what I'm suggesting is that we pass a motion today to give SSEA notice, but also that we explain to SSEA, this is if following our, I mean, what I'm hearing is it's a very real possibility that we might, after we get the presentation, say we want the 50% plan or the 60% plan or the 40%, whatever the number is. And I don't want them to say, yeah, but you can't do it until 2030 because of the notice period. I just want, I want the discussion that I think should take place in the next couple of months to be a fully open discussion with options. I mean, my personal opinion, I think SSEA is doing a good job. Are they doing as good a job for us as they could? I think is a worthy question.
I'll agree with all of that, and certainly I really anticipate SSEA coming and doing a delegation here so we can get a full grasp of what they really do for us and what they could potentially be doing for us in the future. But before I understand it, and I couldn't sit here for 4 hours right now and explain it to everybody, but I think after we have a delegation by SSEA, everybody on council will be able to make an informed decision on where we want to head.
Excuse me, and I do think there has been an appetite for that for years, and I think we should actually just get it done. Get a full and proper review, understand where we're getting good value for our money, and perhaps where some places we're not. Recognizing, the township of Georgian Bay is in a challenging geographical location, in that some of the services and partnerships we have are with people to the east who don't even know where the Georgian Bay coast is. Some of it's for people to the southwest who are in a different, are not part of the Canadian Shield. We have a number of different watersheds that flow through our township. It's a challenging geography. Sorry, that note. We're under contract until the end of 2024, but what I don't know then based on that is if we don't give them notice now, are we automatically assumed to be under contract for 2025? And so to me, I fully imagine that the monies we set aside for SSEA we may not get out of them for 2024, but I want the door to be open for 2025. Anyway, enough of that for now. At least from me. And I'm going to go to Councillor Hazelton and then Cooper, please.
So what I hear is two items. One item is a resolution that you, Mayor, have been verbalizing, and hopefully we can get that pinned down and to initiate a termination for that could be rescinded. And then second item regarding SSCA that we were chatting with Julie about a minute ago is providing an ability to not have it an automatic approval of SSCA, but in fact put it into reserves or something. So do we need two resolutions there?
Through your worship, the second one will be part of the budget motion.
Okay, so we'll make a change to the budget motion to reflect the second half of Councillor Hazelton's thing, and then the other one would be a separate resolution independent of the budget.
Would council give me a moment to pull up the agreement? If the notice
Absolutely.
period is shorter than a year, we wouldn't have to pass
Yep.
the first motion
Okay.
either.
All right, why don't we take a 10-minute break? Or did you want, Councillor Cooper, do you want to jump in on this before we take a break and let Ms. Boutiette do her research? Go ahead, sir.
Can I ask?
I'll be very brief. And I'd like to thank the mayor and my fellow councillors for considering this. I can tell you very directly that I've attempted to have anything examined on SSEA for the last 6, 7, 8, 9 years, and there's been huge pushback. And I'm just so delighted that we're at least looking at this. We need to be responsible for the tax dollars that we generate and then spend. And I think we really need to think about that. It may take 2 years to get out of that. I've always been told that we have a 2-year contract and you have to give them 2 years notice. That's what I've been told in the past. Whether that's correct, I don't know, but we'll find out, I'm sure, shortly. Julie's looking it up. I'm not saying this SSCA isn't doing a good job. I just think that they're able to do a much bigger job for other municipalities that have a huge waterfront in the Severn Sound area and really southern Georgian Bay, which goes right over across through Penetang and in addition. So whereas in our township, it's a very, very limited geography that is covered by SSE. And I know I've said that before, but I really want to pound that one home that it's important for us to remember that because it has not been remembered in the past. Thank you.
Councillor Predco. Oh, you're Mike.
I was on.
Yeah, you were on.
I completely understand the message that would be sent by removing SSCA from the budget and then funding it from reserve if necessary. Again, it's just really the practical. We have an obligation contractually to receive their services and pay for their services. I don't know how we would not pay them if we're contractually obligated and receiving services, and why we would actually not put the money in the budget.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting we break a contract or break the law or anything like that. But what I am suggesting is this has come up in conversation for longer than I've been mayor, which is now 5 years. I think we got to resolve it. And I'm tired of it coming up in conversation with being pushed down the road. And I'm not being critical of any individual or even myself. I'm just saying, let's resolve it. Ms. Way, your fingers are itching, I can tell.
Well, I was just going to say at first glance, I mean, I haven't read the contract word for word because I'm sitting here trying to listen to you and take notes at the same time. We're under contract until the end of 2024. We need to give notice by October 1st of the year prior. So at this rate, we would be giving notice before October 1st of 2024, which would be for a 2025 agreement. So at this point, we're obligated to pay the 2024 costs.
Actually,
unless you have something different or more current.
it actually, if we give notice before October 1st, 2024, we're also obligated for all of 25. It's,
So
it's,
that's okay.
yes.
Thank you.
So we've missed already our cutoff to be out of the agreement for 25. We're currently already committed for 25 as well.
I think it's an important, I think it's important personally that we give notice that we want to renegotiate our contract with SSEA. And I have no idea how different it will or will not appear after we do that. And I'm saying this not because of all these deadlines or anything, but just because, you know, SSEA, we want a careful examination of our agreement with you, and we're willing to change the we may have a strong interest in changing the contract.
Including the notification period, if I may.
Yes.
That's very much what Tay just went through this process, exactly what we are doing here. They went through, they decided, they know that they're not going to pass their budget probably till February. So they brought SSAA back this month to do their delegation so they could put it into their budget or take it out of their budget. I guess they're at their contractual point where they have the ability to make changes. But I think your suggestion on giving them notice that we're wanting to renegotiate our contract for the future, and that it is important that we have a delegation to council so that council understands, then we can make our decisions moving forward.
I'm going to suggest not only a delegation, I'm suggesting that we actually call a special council meeting at some point to, and that will be the only item on the topic.
That's what they did at Tay as well too, because it took up a big part of the day.
Ms. Way.
I was just going to suggest that since we've established we can't amend the amounts for SSEA for 2024, that this be left with staff. I've already reached out to Julie to come. But if we want a special council meeting, I will start looking at dates for the new year. And the direction to staff right now to give notice isn't really an effective direction if we have until October 1st of next year.
No,
so we want to make sure that we can give clear.
I'm disagreeing with you. And you're perfectly correct legally, but I think we should give them formal notice that we have a strong desire to renegotiate our contract. I mean, and by the way, if both parties to a contract are agreeable changing it, they can change it regardless of deadlines. And so again, and I don't mean, I don't want this to be like, you know, we hate them, we want to get rid of them as soon as possible. Absolutely not. This is, we want to understand better the contract we have and how we can make the best arrangement for both parties going forward. And it could be, in spite of doubts that some people have, it could be we end up with something very similar. Or we end up something fairly different. Until we have a decent, well-informed, relaxed conversation about it, we're just going to keep punting this ball down the road every year and sort of giving up because we're stuck now until we're deceased. No. And so I would like us to, Councilor Hazelton, you want to add extra, or is that hand still up? I'm sorry, I'm losing track of when hands go up and down.
It's a new hand up, and you've said much of what I wanted to say. I just to reinforce, contracts can be broken all the time. This contract is a long-term contract, and I would be surprised if a lawyer looking at it couldn't break it in a heartbeat. And not that we want to get harsh like that, but I think your strategy, Mayor, of immediately notifying the intent to cancel is important. It needs to be done today. And we've been wrestling with this for, as you say, many years, long before your time. Let's finally do something and trigger the kinds of discussions that need to take place going forward. Thank you.
Yeah. Councilor Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. Very briefly, I'm not going to my grave until we get this sorted out. Thank you.
Well, that just encourages us to let it keep on going, Councillor Cooper.
Well, that may be your opinion.
And just before we go to break, I just wanted to make mention that SSEA will be watching our meeting here, and I'm sure they're very interested in what we're saying and who's saying it and how we're going to move forward with this. And if they haven't been watching this, I'm certainly going to ask them to watch it so they get a flavor for what we're going to be doing down the road. This is a totally transparent process, and I want it to remain that way.
This is a public meeting, so yeah,
Absolutely.
all our residents should know.
Yeah.
And again, I want to emphasize, this is not an anti-SSEA, at least not in my mind, anti-SSEA. It's let's clarify what they're doing for us and how it fits in with it, the whole thing, and that we have an interest at renegotiating the contract. But again, I'm not going to predict how much different a new contract would be from the old. It could be very similar. It could be quite different. I don't know.
Well, I think we're accomplishing what we set out to accomplish, which was, it was brought up by Councillor Hazelton and Councillor Cooper, that perhaps we need to reevaluate our position with SSEA, and we're not going to know that until we bring them in.
Yeah,
and
no,
have that
yeah,
conversation.
we're not going to resolve it today. There's no way. That would be irresponsible on our part.
Great.
And so our clerk, who is always on the ball with these things, is busy printing out a motion that I will shortly read. And then we'll take a break. No, we haven't passed the budget. Well, we may. We'll see what else comes up in conversation. We'll make it more complicated. Well, it's all being worded in careful clerkese. Okay, let's see here. Okay. It's got moved by Councillor Hazelton, second by Councillor Cooper. Whereas the Township of Georgian Bay has entered into a joint agreement for services with SSEA along with 7 other municipalities, therefore be it resolved that Council directs staff to provide written notice to the SSEA for the Township's request to review, amend, negotiate, or possibly terminate the agreement, and the Council invites SSEA for discussions. All those in favor? And we got more than enough hands to say that is carried. Thank you very much. So it's now 10:35. I'm going to suggest a 10-minute break and we'll get back together at 10:45. Thank you. All right, we're back. So far, we've passed a couple of motions on items that were, I'll call it, in one sense, tangents to the budget, but in another sense, quite related. And so now my question to everyone is other items you'd like to discuss before we look at actually reading the budget motion. I don't know, Councillor Bochek. I'm looking at Councillor Graziano from this angle. It's hard to tell if he's got a single haircut. Oh, okay. All right. There we go. There we go. Councillor Hazelton,
Yeah, I had a haircut too.
looking good.
So one of the things that I just wanted to offer up, it's maybe I'm a slow learner, but it's taken me a while to really understand this budget process. And I think what I'm getting out of Julie on this is that we put all these numbers out there, and some of them are contractual, and we may have to pay them. Some of them are notional, like the burn permits, etc. And by putting a plug number in there for burn permits doesn't mean that we're going to charge for burn permits necessarily, because we haven't passed a resolution saying we're going to charge for burn permits, but it's a revenue number that we've plugged in there, and we may or may not get it. And there's a bunch of other numbers that kind of fit into that category. So in some respects, it's a little bit loose. But I guess what I'm concluding is I'm not seeing any numbers of any what I'll call real big significance that is going to impact the overall call it general levy. And so I think that I'm becoming more comfortable with the looseness that we're at, and that we're generally heading in the right direction. So we probably should get this thing approved. Thank you.
I'm not sure if this is the right time or the place, but I'm going to do it anyways. I'm fairly proud of the work that our staff has done on this budget, and not that I'm a great comprehender of finance, but I looked over the report that was given to us, and I compare this to when I go to the grocery store and buy my groceries, or I go to the gas pump and I get my gas. I look at the GDP, I look at the cost of living, I look at inflation, and I look at how much our increase is, and I don't have a problem with it, and I don't have a problem supporting it, nor going to my constituents and saying, we've done a good job here. We're in line with the economy today, and I'm proud of the amount that we've been able to contain this budget to. And if during the year we're able to make more changes and make more efficiencies in the budget, then all the better. But from this councillor's point of view, I think we've done a great job, and I'm comfortable at this point saying that I would support the. Is that Councillor Jarvis sitting beside Councillor Cooper? Okay, I'm confident and proud to support the budget as it's presented, knowing that it is a work in progress, and during the year we will be making changes that will affect it in some way. So that's my comments to this point.
Well, I'm going to bridge off of your comments. I mean, one, I think I'm very impressed by our staff, full stop. The overall 40, 50 people, I don't even know what the full-time winter number is. It's in the 40 range, 40 odd range, is it not? And the quality of our staff is really quite impressive. It actually is. Even though we don't always understand what many of them do, because they're doing them. For years, I've noticed that sometimes the most competent staff are the ones you never notice, because they're just getting the job done. And I think it's very important that we recognize that, and that this budget has been put together by all our staff to in order for what they believe they require to get the job done. I think it's also important to note, and you brought that up, and as did Councillor Hazelton, this council, every time it meets, will be thinking about dollars and cents in one way or another. We may pass a motion to spend more money, or we may pass a motion to change allocations and things like that. And we can do that. We can change our mind. I think it's very important to note that we've agreed to initiate a study on other sources of revenue. Some of them won't bear fruit, but a few of them will. And I think it's a way of considering, is everyone who uses the services of this township paying their fair share, if I can put it that way. And I think that's something that we need to consider. And I'm hoping that revenue study will be done with a bit of I'll call it creativity, a bit of imagination. Because the easiest thing for us to do is simply say, take our taxpayer and we'll just bump the taxes that much more. We'll hire a few more people. We'll deliver a few more services. That's the easy thing to do. But I think by being a little bit more creative, we could say, yeah, but there are a number of people who are using our services, driving our roads, perhaps putting garbage in a bin, or what have you, and they're not paying for that. And so I'm looking forward to that study. Councillor Graziano.
Thank you, Worship. A couple of call-outs if I can, and I agree. I think staff has done a fantastic job. There's a few things that I'd like to do, and I'd like to also perhaps move a motion if I can find a seconder from the floor as well. Number one, in future budget drafts, similar to that of page 4 that we were looking at, I would very much like to see what costs staff has saved. So what staff-driven cost savings that we are realizing for that particular year. I think that'd be great, not only for our understanding, but also for our constituents to understand that, not only is this an effort that council's undergoing, but it's also an effort that our staff has undergone as well. And here were areas that staff had suggested that we could cut costs on, and that the total cumulative savings is X. So I'd love to see that line item added there. With regards to the motion, again, going back to my earlier comments with respect to IT, given that we're spending $500,000 a year in IT services, I wonder whether we request that staff endeavor to start warming up to and/or investigating a future partnership with the district and what cost savings could be realized if that was the case. Based on what I heard with Ms. Bouquet, when we did go to the well, they weren't prepared for us. It sounds to me like they needed, some lead time in order to be able to perhaps accommodate us into their systems. And I wonder if we move a motion requesting that staff start to investigate this, not necessarily, execute on it and or shift our position, but at least warm up to the idea and start, partnering with their counterparts at the district to start seeing whether this will be a possibility for the end of our term with our IT contract. Because if we can save $100,000, $150,000 by piggybacking off the district's IT services and realizing economies of scale, then I think it's an extra $150K or extra $100K or whatever that amount may be in savings that we can then pass back on to our constituents. So just my two thoughts, and I'll leave it to you if we want to move that motion.
Thank you. So the motion basically is to request that staff explore IT options, service options with the district.
Yeah, I'd go one step even further and say that staff explore, but also see what it's going to take and whether or not they'd be ready for us in 2025, because I believe that that's when we are ending our term with our current IT provider, if memory serves me correctly.
All right, I see another hand, but I have no idea if it belongs to Councillor Jarvis or Councillor Cooper. Councillor Cooper, you're waving, so I see two hands then from you.
You do, and Councillor Jarvis doesn't get a hand. He just gets to sit here.
I can't comment at all, sorry.
But anyway, yeah, I support what Councillor Graziano is suggesting. I wonder, Councillor Graziano, if you might just entertain a slight variation in that we not only examine what might be provided by the district, but maybe other services as well need to be. In other words, we need to look at what we're spending on IT, and is there a better road for us in the future, including perhaps the district service, but might be others. That I don't know that we want to be too narrow. I think we can be a little broader in the thinking. Or maybe that's what you're suggesting anyway, but I could have missed that. But that's sort of what I'm suggesting. Is that something that you see as a friendly amendment to what you're suggesting?
Absolutely, as long as Councillor Jarvis decides to sing some Christmas carols. But with that being said, I know that we are going to be going to an RFP on future IT services. Perhaps it's prudent that we as council review the services that we're receiving to understand whether or not there's redundancies. And, you know, we do have a resident guru when it pertains to all things technology, and a former, senior executive within the technology discipline. So I think that it would be a great way to see whether or not we could cut costs on tech, but at the same time, my motion was really to say, hey, listen, we had gone to the district in the past. They weren't ready for us at the time, perhaps because we gave them short notice. Let's give them enough latitude to be able to, start looking at what the costs are going to be and whether they'd be able to turn us online should we opt for them as a service provider versus our current service provider. So we don't want to make it as narrow and just look at all aspects. I'm happy to include that, of course, because I think the broader the better. And if we can realize cost savings in other areas, we shouldn't just keep it laser focused. So I would agree with that.
And you're fortunate because the motion that was drafted by Ms. Way reads, be it resolved that council direct staff explore IT cost reduction options, and that staff investigate options for IT services provided by the District of Muskoka. And obviously, I think it's assumed that all this would be done before any RFP goes out. Councillor Predko.
Thank you, and through your worship, I guess Clerk Way has already drafted, but I was going to ask for perhaps an amendment to the proposed motion to be for staff to present a report to council on IT strategy, including opportunities for cost savings in the future. I'm not sure what services the district would offer us in terms of IT, but I believe that's only a small portion of our support and operations of that $500,000. It wouldn't be, I can't remember what the line amounts are anymore, but I think it's between $50,000 and $100,000 that we pay for third-party services for support. And I'm assuming that's the zone that Councillor Graziano is referring to.
It is about 50,000 for the managed service, and we also have about 100,000 of hosting costs, which are costs based on quantity or megabytes used. So we already mentioned the alternative to that would be bringing back in-house servers, which would have capital costs, which we currently don't have.
So I'm not sure if Councillor Graziano would see merit in my amendment, but that's my suggestion.
Through your worship, I absolutely would. I would agree that a report is needed for us to understand what we're buying, what we are looking at, and what the strategy is going to be going forward, so we can better understand what those costs would look like. I think that given for the amount of money that we spend in tech, council should have some understanding of where we're going and what we're spending on. So I would agree with Councillor Predko. Thank you.
And Clerk Way did too, because she had already started writing. Councillor Bocek.
Yeah, I would support that amendment as well. Just knowing, as a district employee, the district doesn't do anything that is not in their favor, ever. And there would be advantages to the district to give them our IT. So this report would expose any advantage that the district would take of the lower tier municipality being in charge of the IT. So I would not ever want us to be in a position where we have to rely on district to get done what we want done. And I think that report would flush that out.
Be part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Councillors either Jarvis or Cooper. Cooper, because Jarvis has to keep his mouth shut. Councillor Cooper.
This is going to be remarkable if that happens, but in any event, just briefly, I would ask, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the resolution, but we do have a couple of councillors here that have quite a bit of IT experience. I'm referencing Councillor Predko and Hazelton. And while they may not be currently up to date on every single thing, they know a hell of a lot about the whole IT world. And I think it would be judicious and wise of our staff examining this to have some consultation with our two councillors that are so knowledgeable in these particular areas. And anyway, and I'm not saying that I'm not volunteering for them. I'm just suggesting that we, draw on the talent that's available to us. That's all. Thank you.
So I have moved by Councillor Graziano, seconded by Councillor Cooper, thirded by Councillor Predko. Can we do that? Oh, well, I did anyway. Be it resolved that council direct staff to explore IT cost reduction options and that staff investigate options for IT services provided by the District Muskoka, and that staff provide an updated report on the township's IT strategic plan and services received in-house and contracted. All those in favor? And we got more than enough hands. I think we got everybody. At one point, I thought even that Ms. Boutiette was raising her hand, but then I realized it's the flags over her shoulder. But that is carried.
So, Mayor, if I could.
Maybe. Yes.
In the last term, we were told that everyone has to vote. The mayor has to vote. And for a while there, I was riding herd on ensuring that you told us what your vote was. And with some of the communication that's been going around recently about votes, etc., I would think it appropriate that you, given that we are all being recorded, that you exhibit either a yes or a no vote. And as we've been told, not with no indication of your vote, it would be recorded as a vote in opposition. So I think that in formal meeting protocol, I think it would be useful not just to say there's enough votes to carry it, but given that, again, we're being recorded, that you indicate what your vote is. Thank you.
All right. Well, I would say then the last few votes have been unanimous.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments on our budget? I'm going to read the motion, and then as I read it, if somebody wants to, then I'll ask any questions after I read the motion. And before Ms. Boutiette, did you want any wording at all changed to 4B, which is the SSEA line?
Through your worship, if we could just add with further council approval.
Further council. Done. Okay. So I have moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Predko, and this is a long motion. Whereas council has received the information in relation to budget draft number 2, and therefore council directs, I don't need that in, but okay. Therefore, council directs staff to prepare the budget bylaw containing the following major changes and elements. 1, a $790,570 increase in overall levy, 10.85% overall increase in the township lower tier portion of the overall tax revenues, which includes $369,824 of additional general tax revenue, which is a 3.2% increase in the operating budget and a 7.32% increase in the general levy, and $68,000 of additional tax revenues due to growth, which is 0.94%, and $352,746 of additional capital tax revenues, which is a 16.27% increase in the capital funds and capital levy. 2, $505,543 increase in salaries and benefits made up of A, addition of a chief municipal law enforcement officer, pre-approved by council, offset by removal of one bylaw student from 3 down to 2. B, increased demand of volunteer firefighters. C, addition of finance and IT summer student. D, addition of operation summer students 2 for parks, recreation, and facilities. E, full-time funding a director of planning up from 50% in 2023. F, full-time funding of a manager of planning up from 50% in 2023. Removal of planning technician or admin position. Status quo and nutrition allowance, which is $495,000. Increased CPP costs due to change in legislation. Increase due to cost of living, and increase due to step increases. 3, $1,208,836 in operation grants, which is a decrease of $32,264 from 2023, of which $1,089,600 OMPF and B, $119,236 OCIF. And no, I'm not going to tell you what those letters stand for because I don't remember them all. 4, $602,042 in funding municipal and local boards. A, $496,000 for the Georgian Bay Public Library, which is an increase of $146,000 or 41.7%, and B, $106,042 for the SSEA, including the SSS initiative, an increase of $11,029 or 11.6% with further council approval. 5, $75,000 in municipal grant allowances. A, $65,000 for major item requests approved by council, and B, $10,000 governed by municipal grant policy. Page 1 down. 6, $635,000 in use of reserves. A, $400,000 from the operating reserves, which is the prior year surpluses. B, $75,000 from the planning reserve for the planning review. C, $70,000 from budget carry forward reserve for wharf assessment carried forward from 2022. D, $50,000 for Phase 3 Davis Center. E, $15,000 for development charge study carry forward from 2023. And F, $25,000 for fire master plan carry forward from 2023. 7, new user fees. A, $200,000 municipal accommodation tax. B, $200,000 short-term rental registration fees. C, $20,000 fire permits, which is $10 per permit. D, $48,000 in seasonal marina slip license fees. And E, $6,000 in commercial use of public launches. And 8, council initiatives. A, $50,000 Phase 3 Davis Center. B, $40,000 revenue study. C, $10,000 honeybee advertising. And D, $10,000 additional council meals, accommodations, and mileage. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I make 7. That has passed unanimously. The budget is done. Ms. Bouchiette, you'll be able to enjoy Christmas without having to crunch all these numbers further.
And if I can add through you, Mr. Mayor, that the final of the district was announced at 3.94% for 2024, which is $155.9 million.
Okay, yes. And if memory serves, that was going to affect the average $300,000 residents, and how they calculated. I think it's just over $40 for that resident.
And if I can chime in for a point of clarity, if I may, very quickly, just to confirm, what is our total increase, including that of the districts now that this is passed, what are we looking at increasing total, rather than just the municipal side of things?
5.9, she already told us.
But yet, have you crunched those numbers yet?
I did very quickly at 5.9.
It is 5.9. Okay, thank you.
And that's assuming the education remains at zero increase because we haven't been told anything otherwise.
Correct. That news comes out in February.
Yeah. And for everybody's information, and I don't have the numbers exactly, but district represents something like 48% of our total, and township is like 32% or so, and education is about 20% of our total property taxes, if memory serves.
Mayor, if I may.
I had my hand up.
But
I
have their hand
didn't
up.
know. I thought that that was just left over from before.
Well, it could be too. But, and of course, we never know whether it's a Cooper or a Jarvis, but we'll take our chances.
No, I just had to say thank you everybody for working this through while I was not available to listen in on everything and add my 2 cents worth. Struggling with budgets I've seen through other municipalities is a big item, and I think it's great that we've been able to get something done today. So thank you, guys.
So what's the sadness of all this? No, I'll let Councilor Hazelton go first.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to highlight the fact that we've been talking about having a need for a couple of other urgent meetings. And in our calendars, we have January the 10th, it's a Wednesday, and January 31st, which is a Wednesday, where meetings that are already set aside, meeting dates that are already set aside to be held for budget, which we no longer need for budget. And so presumably that frees up time to consider these other items that we thought were urgent. I just thought I'd point that out. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think I heard from Councilor Bocek, he's hoping we're having meetings every Wednesday.
I beg your pardon.
Oh, he's still paying attention. No, I think it's terrific, and we will see what can be arranged. At this moment, I have no plans of calling meetings in January, but that doesn't mean I won't, depending upon what opportunities surface. But I'm very pleased that over the Christmas holidays that staff won't have to be crunching numbers. I think that's good. And I congratulate everyone involved, including council, but we're the least important here. Everybody involved in getting this budget done before the fiscal year actually starts. I think that is an impressive achievement. And thank you very much, Ms. Boutiette, to you and your team, and to all the senior staff and the rest who made contributions towards this budget the last, 3-4 months that they've been contributing as well. And you've been working on for probably 12 months, 6 anyway. So thank you very much.
Councillor Cooper, this is the first time we've seen a budget before Christmas in the 10 years we've been here, correct? First time.
And you're so glad that Bocek doesn't do the numbers, because I think it's only 9 years. 2 terms of 4 plus one year now.
Balance my checkbook.
All right, we have one other item, and that's around Crime Stoppers. And I think the easiest thing to do is for me to read the motion, because that is the report in effect. And I have moved by Councillor Graziano, second by Councillor Hazelton. Whereas Crime Stoppers of Simcoe Dufferin Muskoka was established on January 12th, 1987, and became incorporated as a non-profit charitable organization February 11th, 1987. The program is operated by a volunteer board of directors who oversees all phases of the program. And whereas Crime Stoppers is not a police program nor funded by the provincial or federal government or from police agencies, the program is operated solely with monies generously donated from the private sector, businesses, or raised through fundraising efforts of the volunteer board of directors and committee volunteers. And whereas Crime Stoppers is a program that benefits everyone in the community, and in 2005, Crime Stoppers International was recognized by the United Nations as a global force in the fight against crime and terrorism. And whereas Crime Stoppers' mandate is to assist the police in solving crimes, thereby making our communities and schools safer through the media, the public is through the media, the public is encouraged to call a province-wide toll-free number 1-800-222-8477 with any information about a crime that has occurred or is about to occur. If the information provided solves it or prevents a crime, the anonymous caller is eligible for a cash reward. And whereas anonymous calls to the Crime Stoppers of Simcoe, Duffer, and Muskoka have assisted the police and other investigative agencies in making 5,231 arrests, recovering stolen property valued at over $13 million, and seizing over $78 million in illegal drugs. For this information, Crime Stoppers has approved $441,197 in cash awards and received over 72,000 tips. Therefore, Council proclaims January as Crime Stoppers Month. Any questions or comments? Councillor Jarvis.
I had to get my secretary to put the mic on. Shouldn't every month be Crime Stoppers Month?
Yeah, but it's only in January we're going to be having a flag raising, and if I pull up my calendar, I'll tell you what day it actually is.
I'm thinking that every month, I mean, everybody should be on top of it every month, but that's it. Okay.
Crime Stoppers flag raising is occurring here on January 8th at 2:00 in the afternoon. January 8th, which is a Monday, 2:00 in the afternoon. If anybody wants to watch a flag go up the pole, that is an opportunity for Crime Stoppers. It's my intention to be attending that event. Anyway, having looked that up, now I have to get back to where I can see your faces. Any other comments? All those in favor? All right. January is Crime Stoppers Month in the Township of Georgian Bay. Thank you.
And Mayor, how did you vote?
Sorry?
And Mayor, how did you vote?
Yay. All right. Moved by Councillor Predko, seconded by Councillor Bocek. Be it resolved, the Council adopts bylaw 2023-129 to confirm the proceedings of the December 19th, 2023 special council meeting. All those in favor? And that is carried. Moved by Councillor Bocek, seconded by Councillor Predko. Be it resolved, the council is now adjourned at 11:17 a.m. Oh, somebody thought it was going to be p.m. until February 12th, 2024 at 9 a.m. or at the call of the chair. All those in favor? And that is carried. And we are done. Thank you very much, everyone.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year. And hope you all have a great break.
Likewise.
Good.
Mm-hmm.